Okay, well, thank you guys very much for attending the Nashville Game Developers panel. Hope the expo's going good for everybody. What's been your favorite game on the floor so far? Mine? Any game in VR. In VR? Okay, yeah. The VR room's been pretty crowded. I haven't gotten over there yet. But anyway, we're from the Nash Game Dev Group, Nashville Game Developers. You can find our website, nashgamedev.org. And we have Facebook groups. And this is where most of our dynamic discussion takes place, is in the Facebook group. And meetup group, if you're on meetup.com and like to get emails of notifications for when there are meetups, we're also on there. Our next monthly meetup is coming up November 26th, about making a plan, which is really important for designing a game. And that's in Brentwood. We got free pizza at 6 p.m., and it's open to anybody of any skill level, of any interest. And we do weekly meetups, too. Corey usually leads those. You want to tell us about those, Corey?
Yeah, every week or so. Not usually every week, but close to that. We do work meets where we get together, bring our laptops, go to a coffee shop, get some work done together, socialize, talk about video game development.
Okay. So I'm just going to introduce the panel. Come on. You're in the right place. I'm driving people away. My name's John Gale, and I'm a Japanese language teacher by trade. I used to be an English teacher in Japan, and now I teach Japanese, actually just down the road here. And I started coming to the Nashville Game Developers Group at the end of 2014, and I knew nothing about game development. Actually, I was trying to be a video game translator, and I couldn't get a job in that industry because I just didn't have the tech skills, even though I was like a real translator. So I started hanging out in the group and hearing words like Unity and method and function and all these technical terms. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I first started attending the meetups, I used to take notes.
Wow.
Yeah. And
what a
excellent
nerd.
student.
And then I would go home and Google, like if somebody said UI, I was like, I don't know what UI is. And then I'd go home and Google it, and say it stands for user interface.
That's the right attitude.
So that's how I learned a lot from the group. And my game, I've got the cards, and I've been demoing it out there. It's a block-breaking game to help people learn Japanese. So if you haven't gotten one of these cards already, you can grab one of those. And I'll let this guy introduce himself.
My name is John Sava, and I'm working on this game, Orange Table. It's a mobile game. I have one other game released, another puzzle game called Dinos in Space. And yeah, that's really it. I like making games.
And you're an app developer in real life.
Oh yeah. So I do app development. That's kind of how game development is how I found myself in software development. I wanted to make a game. I was like, how do I do that? Went to this group, met people who were software developers, thought, hey, like this could make some money, and then I could increase my skills and do games on the side. So it's just a side thing for me, but yeah, the software development is a big part of that.
Okay.
And this game's coming out pretty soon.
December 4th.
December 4th, Orange Table drops.
Yeah, it doesn't say on the website.
Just says December 2018.
Yep.
December 4th on iOS.
It's a good game.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Corey Martin. I've been making video games in some capacity since 2005. I've just been making a lot of small games over the years, kind of honing my skills, trying different things. I do a little bit of everything to make 2D games. So I do art, I do programming, do music and sound, pretty much everything you need to know. And the reason I learned all those things is because it's a lot easier to depend on yourself than it is other people. Mm-hmm. I say that, but I have a history of not finishing projects. So imagine if you had two people like me. You'd never finish anything, definitely. But I'm gearing up to release a mobile game called Leapin' Lads here in another month or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. This is the only recent gameplay video. I put it on my YouTube a couple days ago. The trees don't normally move like that. That was just funny.
Yeah.
But it does show off the gameplay a bit. So you jump either 1 or 2 spaces and try not to jump in the water. Yeah, so this is coming out, like I said, in 1 to 15 months. Yeah, look out for that on the App Store. It'll be free. They're gonna move. The reason I programmed that system was like, what is going on in there? There's like some noise coming. Okay. Yeah, the reason I did that was this is my introduction. I'm talking about my game extensively. The reason they're moving is because I didn't like that they were static. I was like, how can I make them move? I'll just make them squish. So they squish, but subtly now, not so drastic.
Yeah.
That's my introduction. Thank you.
Okay. And wanted to have this to be a Q&A panel because I think part of the main purpose of our group is to get people involved in game design and game development. And it even doesn't have to be video games. It can be board games and card games and rule games. So if you guys have any questions, just throw up the hands and we want to address those first. And if you don't, then I've thought of some stuff we could talk about. But what I'd really like to do is answer the audience questions of what you guys would like to know about game design, game development, or being an indie game dev in Nashville.
This is an open format panel.
Yeah.
We didn't plan at all for this.
Well, this is what these type of panels are. We can
Yeah,
talk about technical stuff. We can talk about programming. We can talk
Right.
about feelings.
It's a conversation.
Yeah. So you guys have anything on your mind you want to ask? Because I've
Well,
thought
don't
of some
pressure
stuff.
them.
At any time, throw up the hands.
Yeah.
I
It is-
guess I was thinking before this panel, like I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been really excited for this panel, actually. And I was kind of thinking about all the different people in our game dev group because we've got 980 some people in our Facebook group and people come and go and everything. And I've kind of thought of like 3 broader categories of the game designers in the group. And one group, and this I want to get your all's feedback on this. One group I would call the hobbyist. Like, and each group is okay. Like, it's fine to be the hobbyist. You know, something just to do for fun as a hobby. And then another group I would call the artist. And these could be game artists, but kind of pursue game development for the artistic pursuit of it itself. And then the third broader category, the entrepreneurs, like people who want to make a career out of it, get a job at a game company, or maybe start their own business or have their game be commercially successful. What do you guys think about those 3 categories and maybe how you fit into them?
I don't think they're distinct, like exclusive categories.
You
I
could
think
belong
you can be
into
all of those.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like generalize somebody and say they're in one of those. Like I think I fit. Wait, what were the categories? Just briefly.
The hobbyist, the artist,
Yes.
and the entrepreneur.
I'm all of those.
Okay.
A little bit of all because, well, it started as a hobby. Yeah, I'm also in it for art because I want to make games that improve the human condition in some way. Maybe not the one I'm making now. It's kind of a tall order for like a a casual mobile game. But
Right.
yeah, and also the entrepreneur because I do want this to be a thing where, you know, I can make enough money to, you know, raise a family and contribute back to my community. So yeah, a little bit of all. But those are definitely probably the categories.
Yeah. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I agree with Corey a little bit. I feel like I fit into a little bit of all 3. It started out as a hobby that led to a career, so I can take it a little more seriously and try to make money. And I put a lot of effort into planning the release, like the business side of this of Oren's Table. Didn't realize how much work that part would be, but I'm hoping it'll make money. I don't think I'm pretty sure it's not going to make enough to support me independently, but you know, getting a bunch of stuff out there and having a catalog of stuff would help with that, I think. So, and yeah, and as far as the art side, like I think that's my above all. That's why I do it. That's like what keeps me up at night, working on stuff is because I just enjoy it, and I feel like it's a good way to express yourself, and it's creative in it.
Right.
I will say I've moved. The extremity of each category has shifted over time. So if you were to meet me a few years ago, I'd be like really pretentious and say any game that's like trying to make money or whatever is like garbage in that those people are morally reprehensible. Some kind of crazy Marxist bullcrap. But now it's like, you know, you get a little bit older and you're like, you know what? You got to make money. And then I do social media for a company out in California called Stencil, and they make game development software. And so I've covered a lot of, you know, mobile games that are trying to make money and seeing that they're not like morally reprehensible. And there certainly are games that are, morally reprehensible. The games that specifically try to manipulate people, like something like Farmville, where the mechanics of it are based on the human brain and optimizing like retention. That's kind of weird. So it's like, but yeah, it's like pretty nuanced. I feel like the best position is to be somewhere in the middle of all three of those things.
Yeah, I would just say for myself real quick, I definitely got into it as an entrepreneur. I wanted to make a business for Japanese language games, but then I sort of followed the path of the hobbyist. Like I didn't really have the business skills or the partners to make it a successful business, and then discovered the artistic pursuit. And like John said, I really enjoy that part of it because it's hard, right? I mean, it's not all rainbows and kittens making a game, but like we still do it as much as it beats us down. We get back up every time and we keep doing it. I don't know if you'll have anything to say about how you're able to do that.
I fell into a depression once because I wasn't finishing projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was in 2014. So, yeah, I've been making games since 2005 and having these ambitious projects that I really wanted to finish, but ultimately they'd all fall through because I'd mostly lose interest, which isn't a very good reason, I don't think, because...
Who here on the panel has lost interest in their game or their project at some point? Yeah.
Yes.
That's kind of a part of it.
But it's like natural that you're going to lose interest in a project because, well, when you're starting, the thing about game development is when you start making a game, every change you make at the start is going to have kind of wide sweeping effects on the entirety of the game. That's when you're making big decisions that really matter. And the further you get in a game, the smaller the impact of each decision you make because you're not defining the core mechanics anymore. And I think ultimately it becomes less interesting because at the start, everything matters. And then later on, it seems like you're just doing a lot of little busy work that needs to be done. And so it's easy to lose interest. But you have to develop the willpower not to lose interest and to realize, well, if you're ever going to make a game, you have to get through the part that isn't that interesting. And that's most of making a game. But there are always like little glimmers of excitement when you're making a game. What was the original question about?
Whatever it was that answered it.
Okay.
Well, I'll touch, what game engines do you guys know of out there that maybe you've dabbled with? Shout it out. RPG Maker, yeah, that's
how
the one
I started.
I keep recommending. What did you have in the back? Uh-huh. Yeah, that's why I've got my phone as internet right now because I opened up Unity in case we wanted to glance at it. You can use it in offline mode, but it really hates that, and it just yells at you. And I really depend on a lot of Unity services for like my version control and having in-app purchases in my games, and like this type of stuff won't work if it's not connected to the internet. But you could still code and program your game.
Yeah, we should probably repeat the questions and comments for the microphones.
Okay. We're just asking what engines people heard of, and the RPG Maker. I should have brought that up too. That's one of my favorites. And Unity and Unreal and Blender. I have Unity right here. That's what I use for my game. Corey, you use Stencil. Not only do you do their social media, but you also use that for your game. And John, you just code natively.
It's a library called Kogos 2D. So it's mostly code.
John's a real programmer.
Yeah.
No such thing.
He fires up his terminal and just types raw assembly language code, and he's hardcore.
Don't do that, but.
So do you guys have any questions about engines or anything like that? Nope. Because we'll keep talking, and you let us know if it's interesting or not. Come on in, guys. You're in the right place. Okay.
Just want to reiterate, this is how you learn to make video games, and it's a very important skill. Thank you.
Right. Well, I am really excited about our next monthly meetup about planning, because I'll admit that's something I didn't really do. Like, I just kind of dove right into Unity and started throwing stuff together, and then it was like, oh, I can make this into like a real shippable game. How important was planning to your guys' projects, or did you just kind of follow that same path that you jumped right into it?
Mine had an interesting path of I had a prototype for something that looked. I should have thought to bring a computer. Then I could have shown images. But I had a prototype of this game that looked completely different, but it was sort of the same mechanic. It's almost like chess. Like the pieces have like specific movements, and you're supposed to move them onto boxes. But the initial design like looked more like this game called Tangrams, which is like the one where you have, it's like a board game where you have these pieces and you're supposed to make a picture by combining the pieces, but you don't know how the pieces fit together. And so the point of that little anecdote was I didn't really plan either, except for like I had a prototype that was kind of fun. And then through work, I met a designer who did all the art for this. And we were talking about it, and he was like, that's a pretty good idea. And then when we started prototyping it out more, realized like it makes more sense if you change it to be these like pieces that are moving, and you're moving into these boxes instead of the tangram aspect. So like as far as the planning, it kind of just came together. And another thing about this game, like, you can tell I didn't plan it because it's taken 4 years, and which is you're like great, like 4 years. Like, why does that take 4 years? It's a simple game, and it really is. But it's has to do with, I had to rewrite portions of it and worked on parts of it that basically were like fluff and like animations that I ended up taking out, right? And so I think planning would have helped.
Yeah.
As far as the thing is, like sometimes it's hard to know what you want to plan for until you've put the thing into people's hands. Like it's kind of this chicken egg problem where you want to have a prototype that's playable, but you don't want to spend a ton of time coding something, because that can take months or a year or something if you're slow like me. And then by the time you get into someone's hands, oh, like this thing doesn't quite work. Like maybe I should cut that out and focus on this other part of it.
Right. I mean I appreciate your honesty that it took 4 years, and what I think too for my game, I had all the levels designed. There's 46 levels. I had all 46 levels designed by April of 2016, because I had a booth at the Nashville Cherry Blossom Festival for it, and it still took me until November of 2016 to actually release it, and I spent like another year like doing updates, and like I had to walk away from it for about an 8-month period, but now I'm back like doing updates and adding features. And so that's like, it was like a year to build it, and then another 2 years of updates and fixing bugs and adding features.
Yeah, games take a long time to make.
Yeah.
I sent you a GIF over email.
Okay.
Of like probably the first build of my game from last year.
Everybody's going to see my email.
Well, that's fine.
They're
What
going
do you
to see
got in there?
emails from my students.
Oh no.
Okay.
I might have copied the wrong GIF. If so, we're in trouble. Okay, yeah. So this is what my game looked like day one. And it's like pretty much the basics. Like I got this working in a day. And from then it's just been kind of implementing features and polishing and making everything seem smooth. So from the first day, it's like, I mean, you can see it's like a stripped down version of the game with no animations, but the basics are there. It's like I had the plan of the basic mechanics, and then I wrote down, like, I thought, what can I do with these mechanics? And I got notebook paper and I just wrote down every little idea I had. So it's like, well, what if you can go to other lanes? Why does there have to be one lane? And so that's a mechanic in the game. And it's like, well, how do you get to those games? And then you think, well, what are different ways you can get there? And then you pick the best possibility of what would be good from a game design sense that would complement everything well. Mm-hmm. And so I think I didn't make like a design document or anything, but I don't know if that's necessary for a game that's small. it's all just like really simple ideas that I wrote down. And
Yeah.
so I can't really speak to like planning a big project. Like, oh yeah, because we're doing like the meetup discussion that Wolfgang's giving on planning your game, and he's worked on some larger projects. His studio does ports of games for companies, and he used to, I guess, like prototype games for some company. So that'll be an interesting talk because that's not
Yeah.
really something I can speak to. Is planning big games.
Well, even my game, I've got 30 pages of internal documentation to like keep it all
Wow.
in track. Yeah.
I haven't even written that many words in my life.
I know. But I mean, this is, going on 3 years worth of work.
Do you feel like all that was necessary?
I do. Yeah.
How does it help you?
Here's my version history. And so the
okay.
next time I go to do a build, like when you upload to the store, like an update to the store, it says, what's changed in this version? So I just like copy paste that text, but I'm kind of using this text to like formulate my ideas. And then when I complete that idea, then I'm like, okay, it's done. Like if I'm still working on it, I put an asterisk in front of it. And then if I completed that idea and implemented, I take the asterisk away.
Oh, you do all your ideas in like just a text document?
Yeah, because it's more like a to-do list. Than
All right.
it
I've been
is
using
like an
Trello.
idea. Yeah, we used a tool called Trello. Have you guys ever heard of this, like for work? I would bring it up, but I haven't used it in years. It's like cards. You've got like to-do, doing, done, and you can join as a group, and it could be like, John, you need to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Corey, you need to do A, B, C. And then when I get X done, I can say it's done. And so everybody on the team can kind of see my progress. And if Corey's waiting for X to be done before he can do A, then he knows when it's done and he
Right.
can start A.
And that's helped me out so much, even as just working on the game on my own. I have somebody doing sound effects. Russell, a local sound designer, is just great. He offered to do sounds on the game. But other than that, I've been working on it solo. And even solo, it's like so useful. Just the way you can categorize all your little to-do items, and it's all like there.
Yeah.
Taking full advantage of the 2D space that is your monitor, and like a normal to-do list, which is just kind of vertical, because this is like a two-dimensional to-do list.
Right. And it is like, if you don't write it down like that, you're either going to forget it or you're going to be tossing and turning at night and be like, I need to add that to my game. I need to add that to my game. But to me,
Right.
like writing it down is like, there it is. Like I'll come back to it when I'm ready.
That
to
part,
work on
that resonates with me.
Yeah.
I didn't have like a to-do. I didn't have any list for my game until this year, and I just keep it in a plain text document because it forces me to just do things one at a time. But it's been so satisfying I keep the completed items at the bottom with little X's by them, and when I feel like I'm not making a lot of progress, because sometimes the grind of the game, it's not something you can show someone. It's just like bug fixes or whatever.
Right.
But having that list of like all these things crossed off makes you feel great.
Yeah.
Or makes me feel great.
Absolutely.
It does.
Oh, it's just great. You're like, because it feels like you're making progress, and without that like tactile like example of the past and what you've done, it can feel like you're not doing anything. But because all you can remember really, like I don't remember previous builds of my game. I remember what the game is like right now.
Right.
And so how do you feel like you're making progress otherwise? It's like you keep a log of it.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. And yeah, just like writing it down so it's not stuck in your head and inhibiting other ideas from coming into your head, because that's like a real thing. Is if you have ideas floating around in your head, you don't have room for other ideas. And so you get those on paper. And when they're on paper, you can like flesh them out more. It's
Absolutely,
it's actually
yeah.
so dumb to just keep ideas in your head. That's so useful. I've realized in every aspect of life, writing helps so much. That's my big advice. Write. No matter what you're doing, just write.
Yeah.
It's the most powerful tool you have in the world, aside from speech.
And that kind of brings me to, I wanted to talk about the game jams we do, especially the global game jam that's coming up January 25th, 26th, and 27th of 2019. And real quick, what a game jam is we all get together. Here we are this past year in 2018, and Friday night about 7 o'clock they announce a theme, and this past year it was transmission. So we give you this idea of transmission, and you have to go build a game around that, and you go talk to all these hundreds of people in the room. And are like, hey, what do you do? I'm an artist. I'm a programmer. I'm a music guy. What's your idea? I was thinking this for transmission, and you sort of throw around ideas and then find who's got similar ideas and who's got the skill sets you need, and you form a team. And then that's Friday night, and then by Sunday at like 3 o'clock, you have to have a game made and you have to present it. And it is like the most intense thing I've ever been involved with in my life. I've done it 3 times now, and each year it's an amazing experience. This past year, I probably put 25 hours of experience using the Unity game engine in a weekend.
Intense, but it doesn't have to be scary. Like
Right.
I enjoy.
Intense
I think it's
in a
fun
good way.
because you don't, especially if you're with other people. It's like no one expects you to have anything polished or maybe even anything done.
Yeah.
Let alone anything working. But just getting to try your hand at doing that stuff, it's like a lot of fun.
Some of my favorites are the people who, when they present, they're like, on Friday night, we did not know what Unity was, but we installed it on our computers, and here's what we've made, And I think that says a lot. Like, that accomplishes a lot, to not even know what a software is. And by the end of the weekend, use it to just have things moving around. I mean, that's still a great achievement. And again, this is open to anyone of any skill set. I know we talk a lot of technical stuff, but the writing and the documentation, like someone with no programming skills or anything, like I always wish we had someone to do that on my team, because I usually end up doing it, but I'm also got my head buried in code. And it's like, if there were just someone who could do all the documentation and administrative work, that would be a huge help on a team.
Yeah, you guys want to type into a spreadsheet, come on down to the Global Game Jam for a good time.
Well, you get to share your ideas and help.
No,
like,
it's a
I
lot
would
of
also
fun.
like, help teach that person and mentor that person.
That's just it's a good way to get started making games. It's also a good way to just have a good time over the weekend at the Global Game Jam 2019, January 25th through 27th at the Wondery at Vanderbilt University. Starts at 6 p.m.
So if you guys are interested in that, I think you could, at this point, Google Global Game Jam Nashville, and it'll come up. There is a 2-step registration process, but on each registration page, we have the link. We have to register people locally and register people globally. So there's 2 steps to that, but both links are also on each other's pages.
John Saba hasn't signed up yet.
Oh, he hasn't?
Uh-oh.
And if you sign up before mid-January, you get a free T-shirt, like what I'm wearing. This is the
I'm going to go sign up
2018.
tonight.
Yeah, you got to get that T-shirt.
I've been sent a very undercover secret T-shirt design that we're going to have for the Global Game Jam potentially.
Oh, really?
Is it going to be good?
Wolfgang Wozniak sent me the Windows 95 logo and said, "This is our T-shirt."
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's going to sign off on that, but keep your eye out if you want a Windows 95 T-shirt potentially. Hell yeah, brother.
All in.
It's the only good operating system.
Yeah. I liked it when they changed the 5 to an 8, like about 3 years later.
Yeah,
That was the big change to
Yeah.
Windows 98.
Hold on. Windows 98 brought a lot of improvements. I don't remember what. Oh, I know.
The 5 changed.
That's because you
to
didn't
an
write
8.
it down. You didn't write your...
Oh, you're right.
You didn't make a to-do list.
Well, I was like 5. I remember that, our computer ran like crap when we installed Windows 98. That sucked. My mom had no idea what to do. She was like, well, I installed Windows 98 and our computer just went to crap. Why'd they make this thing? That has nothing to do with game development, but that's where I got my start game developing, is drawing things in MS Paint and taking screenshots of Putt-Putt Travels Through Time and changing the colors and realizing, hey, I can change the colors. Maybe I could make a video game one day.
Yeah.
So if you want to get started, download MS Paint.
Hey, there's the boss man right there. One of our senior game developer people, and also the head of the Grand Old Game Room Expo. You're not? Oh, okay.
This
Yeah?
is an open discussion. You're free to join.
Yeah. So Digital Hero Games is David's company, and he's got some games out there on that. And you pretty much go solo, right, David? You hire you like contract an artist and
Up to 5 or 6 people
on one of them.
5 or 6 people. Holy, that's a village.
Yeah. That,
Indie game is village.
yeah. So does anybody have any questions? I want to keep checking in with you guys. How you do? Yeah, I'll throw it out there.
So, John, your game was,
Uh-huh.
you teach Japanese, so
Right.
it kind of makes sense.
That's what inspired me.
The board game you have and then the cat game, kind of scroller that you have, like, where do you come up with ideas for the games? And, do you think it's better to maybe kind of draw from your own experience or kind of go out there and make something new that you're really not that familiar with?
That's a good question. I think it's good to draw from the type of games that you like playing. Like that's, I forget where I saw this. Derek Yu has a great Venn diagram. He's a game designer. Made Spelunky, great game. But he has this Venn diagram. It's like games I want to make, games I'm good at making, and games I want to have made. And so the first category would be like, I want to make this because I want to animate this cool character, or I want to play around with this cool mechanic. And like in my mind, that's exciting. And I want to communicate that. The second category is what I was talking about earlier, just stuff that you like playing. Like maybe you understand the flow of like board games, and so you gravitate towards that, and you played a lot of them, and you feel like, oh, I could do this. So that's that second category. And the third one's the games you want to have made, of like, that's the, when you're, maybe the process itself sucks, making it, like this is going to be grueling, it's not even going to be fun developing it, but by the end of it, I want to have this, this idea that has come to life, and I really believe in that idea. And so maybe trying to pick something like in the middle of those three. That's, I don't know, that resonated with me, and that's kind of how I feel about, I don't know, like the mechanics for the one that I have is just something that kind of worked, and after I showed it to some people, and they said, hey, this is fun. And like, hey, you can make a bunch of puzzles with this pretty simple system.
Because you had to design, am I correct, 100 puzzles for this game?
I ended up doing about 130.
Oh, wow.
Didn't have to do that many. I think that may have actually been a mistake, because it made it like I think there's too much in there. Mm-hmm. But now that they're there, I'm just going to leave them there. I'm not going to take them out. Yeah.
Wow.
I would agree with that. That diagram sounds like a good idea. I think he explained it well. How coming up with the games? I'd say, well, it's not like you sit down, then you think of like this brilliant idea, then you just make it. It's like you need to prototype something, because I've had so many times where something sounds like, I'll sit down, I'll come up with some mechanics, and it'll sound perfect in my head, then I prototype it, and it's just absolute trash. And it's like, I can't think of how to even make this work. And it's like, well, it's a good thing I made a quick prototype rather than like, let's make all the art and start making assets and make it real polished, and then you find out that it doesn't work. It's like you start with something that's fast and something that can like that you can test the mechanics in. Like that example I showed of Leapin' Lads, where it's like bare bones graphics and animations, like no animation. That's what I did, and I thought it was fun just playing that. And if that's fun, where the game's like stripped down to nothing and it doesn't have any bells or whistles, and it doesn't even elaborate on its own mechanics, then, well, you can turn that into a game. And yeah, prototyping is very important. I feel.
we do a paper prototyping night as one of our monthly meetups every year, and that's one of my favorite ones. And what the leader of our group does is he gives us conditions. I think this past year it had to be player versus player, and it had to have I remember one year it was an upgrade mechanic, but what was the condition this year? That was last year's condition.
I thought that was this year.
This year it needed an upgrade mechanic?
I think.
Okay. And then
No. It was a status effect this year.
a status effect
Right.
mechanic. Yeah. So he gives you those conditions, and then we've got maybe 45 minutes to make a game, and we've got stickers and dice and cards and everything. And I always bring a bunch of Batman stickers and make like a Batman game out of it. And like that is really intense and a lot of fun. And again, anybody can come to the group and do that. But that's kind of what we're learning to do is how to get that prototyping. Because when you make it at the end of that 45 minutes and then other people play it, you see everything that's wrong with it. Like
Right.
hindsight's 2020. It's like that's why I think because I do this too. Like when I play a game and I really hate it, I'm like they should have known better. But like really, they might not have known better until like they shipped that game and then people hated that, and then it's like looking back, everybody of course has the perfect vision.
Right.
And then, like, kind of going back to what you said about the core mechanic, like that's a really good principle of,
Oh, yeah.
of if you can prove out that one thing just feels right. Like if you think of Mario and like just how good it feels to move around and jump and stuff, and like how satisfying it is to like plop a Goomba on the head, like that's great. And so, yeah, this
Yeah.
part that takes all the time is after that.
It's onion design is what they call it. I don't know if you've heard
Onion?
this term. Like an onion. Like you cut an onion, you know
Hold on.
the core of the onion is what makes you cry.
Who calls it onion design?
This like the game design books I read.
They.
I'm a game designer now. I read books about game design, and this is what they say that you have like a core, what you're talking about, a core mechanic, and you have to get that right. That's what's most important, and then you go to the different layers of the onion, the
Right.
different features and everything. Because I have a project that I'm kind of shelving right now. I was working on it with a partner, and kind of looking back at why this. I wouldn't say it's completely failed, but it's definitely on infinite hiatus. And looking back on it, like he and I would get together and we would discuss the core mechanic, which was to be in a Japanese classroom and to practice writing characters on the board. And we had agreed on this core mechanic, and he was going to go back and prototype it in Unity. And then he sends me a bunch of pictures and images. He's like, usually it starts with the phrase, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" And that kind of derails projects because he was like, wouldn't it be cool if in the story you were like an exchange student flying to Japan and you're like in the airplane and you're looking down on Japan as you're about to land? And so then he spent hours and hours building this 3D model of this plane and got a map of Japan and made it so that you could look out the window. I mean, this took him hours to do when we agreed upon this classroom mechanic that eventually never got worked on, and that's what derailed the project.
I think the problem there is priorities.
Right.
It's like you get the classroom down first completely, like
Yeah.
100%. Then if you think that would add to the game, the flying over Japan and
Yeah.
landing, like you can do that, but you don't want to get into the fluff, like big things of fluff before you have the core
Exactly.
down. I've seen so many instances where stuff like that happens. It's happened in my own games. And, you kind of learn the hard way is that's not a good way to go. You're not going to finish a project if you're working on things that aren't important.
Yeah.
Like, it's all about priorities.
And the book I recommended in the game believability panel today, it's called Video Game Storytelling. That guy works in the AAA industry, and he said that's kind of the problem with what's going on in AAA games. There's hundreds of people in 3 or 4 countries working on these games, and anywhere in that chain, it only takes one person to say, wouldn't it be cool if? And then, like, kind of derail a little bit the direction of the game.
Game development should never be cool. Should be gruesome.
Yeah,
Should be hard. Should be trying.
it should be. And then you get through that fire. But no, I mean, I guess that's a warning sign. If anybody on your team is saying, wouldn't it be cool if? Then just, like, pause.
That's like me
Yeah.
at the game jam 100%. Like, wouldn't it be cool if? Which is probably why my projects never get finished.
I never finish anything because we just goof off the whole time and
Yeah.
just hang out.
But I remember one of the things that was in your Just Josh game. It was like a puzzle with like someone turned into a tree or
Oh, yeah.
something. That was totally worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that
Even
was
though
like-
it wasn't finished.
Well,
it
those
was-
were the core mechanics. Mostly.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I brought up RPG Maker because it's one of these engines I like for the fast prototyping, like Corey talked about. I've got a panel tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m., and we're going to spend just 5 minutes in this engine trying to make as much game as we can within like 5 minutes.
You have a 5-minute panel?
No, I have an hour-long panel.
Oh.
5 minutes of it is we're going to try to make a game in RPG Maker just to see how easy and or hard it is.
You can't make a game in 5 minutes in RPG Maker.
Come to the panel and we'll see about that.
Maybe. We'll see. I'll have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
You guys should go to that and then tell me how it goes. How do you have 3 panels, John? You're hustling.
I'm a game designer. This is what I do for a living.
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah.
Uh,
Other questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I think that led from your question. All
That's
of
a
that.
great question.
Yeah, that really had. What I kind of talk about in the I'll just play contrarian for a moment, because what I talk about in the panel tomorrow is that like ideas are worthless. It's the execution of ideas that has value. And what you were talking about, like writing things down, that's an execution
Right.
of an idea. And that's what's really important. Because, I mean, I could sit here for the rest of the time we have in this panel and vomit ideas for video games for 20-some minutes, and it's just worthless. It's really about making those design documents or those sketches or those prototypes. That's what has value and
How
gets
about-
you moving.
How about a game where you could do anything?
Doesn't work. You need to have 3. This is what we're going to do activities tomorrow. We're going to do game design activities, 11:30 a.m. So
Welcome.
come check out the panel.
And no one wants to play an anything game either, because then there's no focus there.
That's real life, John.
Like what would you do if you could just do everything?
Don't think like that. I'm concerned. That you're talking about real life. That's a do anything game.
Real life is horrifying. That's why games are fun.
You need to have focus in life, and then it becomes a game.
Yeah.
Because if you don't define your goal, then it's just like this big sandbox. And what do? You define your goal. Suddenly, life's a game, and you have something to aim for. John.
That's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
important for because you can work on your game forever, until it's perfect, which will be never. But you have to cut it at some point, and you have to say this is it. And I did that for Hiragana Breaker in November of 2016, but then like the quality and the polish really wasn't what I wanted to be. So that's why I've been adding features to it.
Right.
But especially John, 4 years on Oren's Table, and you're about to release it December 4th. What did you say? Like, this is it. Like, how did you come to that point?
Honestly, I'm just like tired of working on it, and I'm ready to work on other stuff. But I don't know. Like I had this idea of the stupid thing I did with this was, so the game has all these pieces. Like you can see some of them there, and there's like 6 of them, and then there's a couple other features, like game mechanic features, like those conveyor belts, and then the extra moves, which are the numbers that appear above some of the pieces. And then just earlier this year, I decided, this game is called Oren's Table. Wouldn't it be cool if there's like, spoiler alert, a secret piece called Oren, who like you unlock like for the very last level, and that's it. Because like that's something I'd like in a game, and I blame that on it taking like 6 months longer than it needed to. Because once I added that, I had to go back and like break some of the code that I had written to add in this new piece, and I had to basically beg my designer, the artist, to do it. And that's an interesting story. That's like another discussion. He's basically like, I'm out. He didn't say that, but he's so tired of working on this too, like that. He's kind of understandably, almost unresponsive. Great guy, don't get me wrong, but he's sick of working on this game, and I feel like, adding stuff at the 11th hour, it was maybe
what broke the camel's back for him.
Well, that's also kind of like that was to answer your question. That was my. Now it's done. There's no reason to add anything else. This isn't. The fun part of this game could really be communicated in about half of the amount of content that there really was.
Right.
Which is why I think like 120 puzzles may be too much, because like you really don't need that many to get the idea across. You can always add more later for the people who like it, but
because Corey said before that like working with other people, like you are going to have disagreements and people are going to let you down like this. Like that's just part of the game, if I can use that expression. But like for Hiragana Breaker, we had this bug where the ball would get caught along an edge. We didn't have these knobs in here, and the ball would get caught on the left or right edge and go up and down infinitely, and there was no way to save it. All you had to do was lose the level. And it was working through someone else who I paid a considerable amount of money, and he was just like rebuilding the game from scratch when, again, I really wanted to say the game's 80% done. I need help finishing the last 20%. And he's like, we'll start from zero and rebuild it. And so that didn't work out, and that was rough. But they figured out this problem, And like if I had not worked with them, because John, my programmer, and we were coming up with all sorts of crazy, stupid programmatic ideas to fix this problem, and it's just like, just throw in this knob. It's basic pinball physics, and then that solved the bug without using any code, really. So you will have that creative conflict with people, but good things can come from it at times.
I don't think it's important to have other people to give feedback and ideas for your game. I don't think you necessarily have to work with them. There's nothing wrong with working with people, of course, but like I have friends that I bounce my games and ideas and prototypes on, and they'll give me feedback all the time. Like every build of my game, when there's something I'm not sure about, like those bouncing trees earlier, I showed it to a buddy and it's like, hey, look at this. Funny, right? And he's like, that's actually a pretty good effect for how much time it probably took. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe I should keep that, just tone it down a bit. And so, yeah, feedback is important, like having other people to look at your stuff and pitch their own ideas. Absolutely.
Yeah, a big part of Hiragana Breaker is the quizzes. Like, honestly, my programmer and I, we didn't think about this until we put it into people's hands and they were playing it, and they were like, there should be quizzes. And we're like, of course there should be quizzes. It's a language learning game. Like, what else is the point? And then it was like, it took us about 10 hours worth of work, the two of us together, to get the quizzes functioning. And then when we did, it's like, you can beat the game now. Like, it has an end. Like, it has a purpose to it. And it was like this huge revelation that honestly would not have come up if I didn't have it at a table like this and have other people play the game.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't make games in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Because then you can't breathe.
You guys who came in, do you have any questions about the Nashville game dev scene or designing games or anything? I want to give a shout out to JB Con. They designed games. They come to Game Jam. They
I thought
come
it was
up with some
JB
clever
Con.
stuff.
JB,
JB.
but it's Jabe. It spells
Jabe.
Jabe. Okay.
Most people say Jabe Con.
What? Wow. Got it.
I don't know why it's pronounced that way or spelled that way. It's just kind of how it came about. It's how we said it originally, and the spelling kind of came after the meaning. Because it stands for Japan Animation Works Entertainment. And we made a couple of games. We're hopefully knock on wood working on some more, but it's the ways out. But we'll be at Game Jam, hopefully.
Yeah.
Helping somebody else out, making something,
Mm.
and working with some people.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
And you had a question in the back? Yeah.
You spoke about giving feedback, right? So, like, how much feedback do you set yourself up to absorb? Like, do you have like a piece of paper with questions like that? Because I've been at like tests, I've been a test subject to like certain things with like videos or something that hasn't come out yet, and you answer these questions about how you felt about it.
Right.
And I'm sure that was part of their way of getting their projects done. But like how much of that do you do to receive feedback?
Yeah. How do I go about receiving feedback and
Like what questions should you ask about like your 3D animation? Or your project, how far you've gotten on it, and then you stop and ask yourself these questions to certain people because you feel like maybe there might be changing that.
yeah. I don't really have a process for receiving feedback. It's mostly just I'll have friends play my game. The game developer friends mostly, because those are my friends. And like usually just if I'm not sure about something, I will show it to people and say, what do you think about this? And there's actually like there's always this feeling of resistance where it's like I don't want to hear what they have to say because it might be critical.
Yeah. But you have to hear it.
Right, because
Yeah.
if you're closed, it's just a natural tendency for any person to not want to be criticized, but it's an important part of the process, so you have to let that go. I have a lot of Flash games, like on various web portals, like Newgrounds and GameJolt, back when Flash was still a thriving. And
thing.
the best thing about that is people can leave comments on the games, and I have some really well played games, like in the hundreds of thousands, and I've gotten a lot of comments on those games, and a lot of them, most of them, are just absolutely just trashing you, just cursing you out, just wishing death upon you, and it's like, well, I always tried to look through that and see what are they actually trying to say. This guy who
Yes.
says, I hope you drink bleach and then go to sleep on the freeway because you drink too much bleach and then get hit by a semi-truck and then it doesn't kill you and then you're in a hospital and you're paralyzed and your family has to watch you suffer. And it's like, okay. And also because the character like spazzes out too much. I'm like, okay, what is he... Let's just forget all the other stuff and like, what is he actually saying?
The character spazzes out too much.
Right. Well... Like, and it's like, well, what does he mean by that? You have to think, and then you collect all the feedback, and then you look for commonalities in the feedback, and then from that, you kind of analyze your own game with that perspective and try to come to a conclusion of how your game could be improved or why they don't like your game. So, I think any feedback is useful to some degree. There's no such thing as absolutely useless feedback.
Right.
Even if you don't agree with the feedback, it's still useful to know like what people think about your game.
And like you were asking, like what questions do you ask? And honestly, like I've never asked questions because part of it is I know how my game's supposed to go. That's how I'm supposed to control it. I've got all that space under the paddle to move back and forth. But when I watch people play it, they naturally touch the paddle. And their thumb covers it, or their finger covers the paddle, and then they can't see the paddle, and that negatively affects their performance in the level. And that's not about like a question or anything. That's just about like someone who's not me, because I know how my game operates. I need someone who's not me to try and operate the game. And when I see what they do, I see, oh, this is a problem. So then I added a tutorial and some hints and tips that explains that. And that's one of my planned updates is to put maybe a knob or something here for people to touch instead of the paddle. So it doesn't have to be about questions. So if you come to my table and you're playing my game and I'm like staring at you and I'm just collecting that feedback, and if I'm kind of breathing heavy, it's just because I've put on some weight recently. So don't get freaked out by it.
I'm a little freaked out. Another thing is when I do ask questions, like, oh, I have this design problem. How am I going to solve it? I'll ask it to somebody. But usually, like, I'm asking myself just out loud. I'm using them as a rubber ducky, as they say.
Yeah.
It's good to talk to rubber ducks. Because
Have you guys heard that rubber duck debugging? It's like if you were coding and you've got a bug, what you do is you put a rubber duck on your desk and you explain to the rubber duck why the code is supposed to work. And like 90% of the time by doing that, by trying to explain it to a rubber duck, you figure out what was wrong and you're able to fix it. So they call it like rubber ducking or rubber duck debugging.
Yeah, something important to realize is the human brain wasn't designed to make video games or program. And so you have to use...
Was
it? I don't think so.
No, because I have gained a lot of skills from learning to program, and part of it has been, this sounds kind of weird, but part of it has been to think like a machine, like to like remove my emotion for something and be like, if X, then Y. Like I don't think about it, just if X is true, then I do Y.
Right.
And that can lead to productivity efficiencies too.
Right. But then you have like little tricks like the rubber ducky thing. That's not like, I'm going to think like a computer. I'm going to talk to a rubber duck. Computers don't even have a concept of rubber duck.
Unless you define the rubber duck.
And they don't talk to themselves. So it's like you have to use little tricks like that. And like even like getting yourself to be productive, that's all about like biological tricks and taking care of yourself and getting enough sleep and eating. And
but there you go. If it's 10 p.m., then I go to sleep.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that.
Me too.
That's yeah.
But you had a second question too, right?
About the global game jam.
Uh huh.
So for the brought up a name or a word, and then get a team of people, and then all of a sudden everybody just gets together and just comes up with something. The question for that was, I don't really know how to put it, but like, so when you have a like, one of y'all made a comment about they downloaded Unity and the weekend they learned it.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have that, and you just were still kind of like stuck, or this 3 day process, you just
Yeah.
kind of barely got something done.
So the
If I could,
yeah, they've made games at the game jam.
I don't know how to program. I've never used Unity. I've made 2 games. I made one out of cardboard because our original idea, we had a group, and that group came up with a better idea that fit for them. We went, let them keep going on that. We made what our program idea was out of cardboard. We just did a board game version on the most recent one. And then previous to that, we also did one purely from YouTube using annotations and a choose your own adventure. We didn't use Unity at all because we knew we couldn't learn it to the degree that we wanted to do the game. But in the year in between that, we actually worked with the group. The group knew Unity. They were able to download it, work on it, and also we helped out John Gale's team one year.
That might be on my website.
So we worked on several different ones without us having the.
This one, the ritual reversal. Yeah.
So they actually did the Unity part, and me and my brother who didn't use Unity at the time. He uses it a little bit now, but we didn't know any of this. So we helped out in other ways. We did art graphics, we did music, we did other things that helped those pieces come together. So even if you can't do it this year, maybe download Unity this year, learn it throughout the year, and then next January, next game jam, next event, you might have more insight. And talk to those other people who are learning it that weekend.
Yeah.
That's what helped us the most.
Yeah.
If I could tag in, sorry.
No, thank you.
No, there's a lot of ways to contribute without having to know a tool. But at the last game jam, I ran alongside John Gale. It was the Adventure Science Center jam. We did it at the Adventure Science Center, which was great. Somebody in our group, Toya, a writer, basically learned a brand new tool that she'd never used before and made a game out of it. And as far as I know, she's not like a programmer or anything. It was kind of like this visual, easy to use thing, and she learned it over the weekend and made a game. So there are a lot of ways to.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn the most complicated thing necessarily.
This is my website, johnsensley.com/game jams, where I've got all the game jams I've worked on. And Toya, the writer, again, who doesn't program or have those kind of technical skills, I mean, she was like our team leader for this project. She wrote the story, she wrote the dialogue, she recorded it. I mean, she stayed as busy as me pretty much the whole weekend doing non-technical work while I was doing the Unity work. So I think you can get busy. What I would just say is, and our leader, he recommended this that our leader, Christopher Cotton,
Our leader.
he was like, try not to get on a team of more than 6 people. And I would even bump that up to 7 just as an odd number in case you had to vote or battle royale it out that you'd have an odd number to vote against. Because, my first year for this game, I mean, there were that's the one I said, there were 12 people on the team. And we were making 3 different games. It was almost like 3 teams making 3 games. And then at the end of it, it's well, we got to pick one, So that's one thing. I would keep the teams to about 7 people. Maximum, yeah. But then also do try to find other people to work with. I personally think it's a shame to come to this huge event. You're welcome to do whatever you want. But to me, it's just a shame. We've got all these people gathered this one time per year, and if you just sit in a corner by yourself and do something you could have done on your own time anyway or your own weekend, I feel like that's kind of a waste. It really is an opportunity to collaborate with other people.
Man, I met a really good friend 2 years ago at the Global Game Jam. Drew Swisher, musician. I was working. It was me and my friend Charlotte, and Drew just came in the room and was like, "Hello, I make music. Do you guys need music?" And he was the coolest guy. He made the best music, and we got along great. So, that's a good.
You
it's a
make
good,
friendships too.
Yeah, it's like work with other people, make some friends. Friends are important and useful for humans. That's my advice.
Yeah. And that first game jam though, where's it at? The one you guys worked on, the ritual reversal. I'd been using Unity all of 6 weeks. I'd been taking an online course, and you see this boss fight right here? I designed that. Wow. Had I ever designed a boss fight before?
No, absolutely
Did I have
not.
any idea what I was doing? No.
No.
But by the end of the weekend, I'm like, I designed a boss fight. Like,
Preach.
Nobody can take that from me ever. I mean, it felt great.
Give it here.
Yeah, question.
Is as far as monetization and earning money, are y'all like free to download and then purchase in the app, or
That's mine. Just about 2 months ago, I guess that's another mistake I've made, to talk about mistakes, is when I first released the game, it was just $2 straight up. And then when I was doing events like this, like a lot of people don't want to pay $2. They want to try it before they buy it. So I had the $2 version and the free version, which was like what they used to do back in 2009, but by 2016, that wasn't what you were supposed to do anymore. So then I made it free to download. The first 5 levels are free, and it was $2 to unlock everything else. And that's still kind of true. But when you follow that model, about 1 to 3% of the people who download your game will buy it. So my downloads went way up, but my sales and my revenue actually went way down from when it was just straight up $2. And I was like, I thought, well, I could make revenue off 1% of the downloads, or I could make a small amount of revenue off 100% of the downloads. So then I have it, you can watch an ad to unlock a group of levels, like one at a time. And if you average out the 1 to 3% who buy it and the ad revenue, I'm going to average about 15 cents per download. So you can do the math of how many downloads I'd have to get to make a living off my game. Buy my game.
I know I do, like I said, I did Stencil social media and covering mobile games. A lot of them make a lot of good money. A lot of people making livings just free to download, ad-supported games, and the option to remove the ads, or like little microtransactions that aren't predatory. You can make good money doing that. So that's the model I'm going to be trying out for Leapin' Lads when it comes out in a month or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Or 1.
Wait, John, how are you? What are you doing?
What are you doing for Oren's table?
Yeah, it's same model. It's no ads, but you can play the first set, and then it's $2.99 for the rest of the puzzles. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
My concern is that people will say like, "Oh, this is great," and then like you have to solve 16 puzzles to even see the pay screen. Well, to be directed to the pay screen and not search for it. So I don't know how that's going to work, but we'll see.
How many people will finish those 16 puzzles?
Right. I mean, they're
Yeah.
quick. You could do it in a few minutes, maybe even like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But
I've learned, because I go to a lot of game conferences now too, and some people will get up there and they want to talk daily active users, DAU, and monthly active users, and what's your what is it? It's like, what's your 7, 15, and 30? And when people say that, they're asking what's your 1, 7, and 30, and they're asking what's your 1-day retention, what's your 7-day retention, what's your 30-day retention, and there's a lot of metrics you could really deep dive into, and I haven't gone that far with it because again I just don't have that kind of scale. Of
Sounds
a game.
like capitalism to me.
Yeah. So we are out of time. I think we got a good chunk of time till the next panels. Anybody have any final questions they want to throw out there real quick? Yeah. Sure.
When you all start these projects, do you want to solve a problem for your game? Like, say something comes up and you're like, oh, well, this is how I'm going to solve this problem. As far as helping people learn language, or do you just have an idea that you kind of try to execute? How do you all start these projects?
For me, it's easy, so I'll just take it. Like, I do teach Japanese, and what I have up here are the 46 basic letters of Japanese hiragana. So I see students get intimidated with this or halfway through the term, I write something on the board that we have learned and they can't recognize it. And so that's why I just learned, like, even recognition of the characters itself is really important. And so that was sort of my inspiration and my design philosophy, is to give you a way to recognize these characters, to interact with them outside the world of study. Yeah, so that was the problem I was trying to solve. What about you guys?
My game's just supposed to be fun, but nothing wrong with that. But I know Jonathan Blow. He made Braid and The Witness. Like when he made, there's this game called The Witness, and I guess the problem, I wouldn't say problem he's trying to solve. The thing he's trying to address is the feeling of having a problem, really trying hard and not being able to solve it, then walking away, then having an epiphany on how to solve it, and then coming back to it. So there are lots of different ways you can approach how to, like, why you're making your game. It kind of depends on what kind of person you are and what you're trying to do, and it probably varies project to project.
Yeah, the why is a really hard question because, like Corey, mine's for fun, for entertainment mainly, and I picked it because I thought it would be enjoyable, not because it's gonna save every baby or whatever. But I'd love to save babies.
Well, I guess we can bring it back to my question at the top of the panel to kind of close things, is when I thought of the three categories: the hobbyist, the artist, and the entrepreneur. Like, depending on which category you are as a game designer, I think that'll sort of inspire you. If you're the hobbyist, you're just doing it because it's fun. If you're the artist, you're doing it for the artistic pursuit and expression of it. And if you're doing it as an entrepreneur, it's to solve a problem or to make revenue. Yeah. And again, like we said, we can fit into all three categories, in varying degrees and at varying times. So I don't know if that was a really strong conclusion or not, but
It was strong.
it was strong.
It was strong.
It was strong. It
Very
tied it back
strong.
to what we talked about at the top of the panel. So I'll close it there. We'll be hanging around after this if you guys got other questions you want to talk about. And I've got a table out there. I'll be at tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. bright and early. I'm going to do my panel from zero to video game designer, where I kind of tell the story of how I literally went from nothing to having a game out on the store. And we're going to do some game design activities as a group. So if you're still here at the expo, check that out, 11:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. And again, enjoy the rest of the show, guys. One more check. Orange Table, dropping when?
December 4th.
December 4th.
4th.
Orange on iOS. Corey Martin, Leaping Lads.
CoreyMartin.net.
.net.
That's Corey without an E.
Yeah.
There's another game developer with an E.
Oh,
and
really?
People confuse us. Like I've talked to him on Twitter. Like
Yeah.
somebody was like, "Hey, I loved your work on this game." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Oh no, that's the other Corey Martin, the one with the E."
He's supposedly the one attending this panel, according to the schedule.
Yeah,
with the
whoever
E.
wrote my name with an E, I almost didn't show up because I was like, "Oh, I guess I've been replaced because I'm not wanted here." I see how it is.
Yeah. And I'm at johnsensei.com. So thank you guys again for attending and participating, and hope you enjoy the rest of Grand Old Game Room Expo.